Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. My name is RJ Witherow, and I'm the events manager here at Parnassus Books. Tonight, I am so excited to bring you Nashville YA author Erica Waters for the release of her new book, The River Has Teeth. Just as a reminder, you can get a signed copy of The River Has Teeth from Parnassus, and there will be a link in the Facebook comments below. And just on a personal note, I could not recommend this book enough. It is fantastic, so make sure you get your signed copy while they last. Tonight, Erica is taking questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, put those in the Facebook comments for a chance of having them answered during tonight's presentation. We're also extra lucky tonight because Erica is joined by adult and YA thriller author Wendy Heard. I am so pleased to turn it over now to Erica and Wendy.
All right, thank you, RJ. We're so excited to be here. Erica, happy birthday.
Thank you.
How's it feel? Book number 2 in the world.
You know, it feels really nice. Like debuting was just terror and angst, but sophomore book feels good. It's like, okay, I've done this. I did it during a pandemic. It can't get worse. So I'm mostly just having a really good time. Yeah.
You probably released during the pandemic the first time and thought, by the next time, there won't be a pandemic anymore. And now here we are online.
Yes, that is definitely what I thought.
Yeah.
But this feels kind of like the new normal now, just doing virtual events. So it's not so bad.
You know, I kind of like it. Like, for example, you and I are agent sisters, right? We have the same agent and we have chatted on Twitter and stuff a bunch of times, but I don't think we would have had the opportunity to do an event together if things weren't online. So I'm so glad we were able to do that.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for coming and co-hosting with me.
Yes, I can't wait to talk about your brand new book, baby. I know that this book has been getting, just endless reviews, positive reviews online, and for really good reason. Like Ghostwood Song, The River Has Teeth is just, atmospheric, it's lyrical, it's eerie, it's just a gorgeous book. So I think we should go ahead and describe it. Can you tell us a little bit about The River Has Teeth?
Sure, yeah. So The River Has Teeth is a YA contemporary fantasy. Some people call it a paranormal thriller. Some even say it edges into horror. So I'll let readers decide on that for themselves. But it is about a girl named Natasha whose sister goes missing near a nature park. And when the police don't turn up any leads, Natasha goes looking for leads of her own, and she teams up with a local witch named Della, hoping that Della can help her find her sister. But what she doesn't realize is that Della is hiding secrets of her own, namely that she thinks her own mother, who was turned into a monster by a spell gone wrong, might be responsible for the missing sister's disappearance. So it is a book about witches and monsters and magic.
Yeah, the Della's mom thing is so interesting to me. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit more? I mean, no spoilers, but can you tell me, like, what gave you the idea of, casting her mom that way? And tell us a little bit about what happened to her mom. It's pretty early in the book that comes up, so I don't think it's too big of a spoiler to talk about.
Yeah, I don't think it's a spoiler at all. Yeah, so basically, at the beginning of the book, we know that about a year ago, Della's mom went out trying to fix something that had gone. So they live near this nature park called Wood Thrush Nature Park, which the family has lived there for generations and generations, and they know it as the Bend. And so the family has drawn their magic from the Bend for generations, but lately something's wrong with the magic. It's going wrong, spells are going awry. And so her mom went out to try to figure out what it was and to fix it, and something went wrong and she was turned into a monster, which I don't really reveal until in its entirety until later in the book, but you can think of her as a river siren, which is what I call her in the book. And so ever since then, Della's been dealing with caring for this mother who at night changes into a river siren and is incredibly dangerous. And so she was so dangerous, the family couldn't figure out what to do with her and how to keep her from harming people. So they locked her up in an abandoned prison near where they live. And so, and so Della, when girls start going missing in this nature park, Della starts wondering, is my mom getting out somehow? Is she the one out doing this? And so the mom is in a lot of ways kind of a personification of the magic of the Bend itself, of the land. And so that's really where I drew her from, was from this, Tennessee landscape, this murky river that runs through this town. And she's sort of the embodiment of all the magic gone wrong in this place.
So it takes place in Tennessee.
Yes.
Is it fictionalized, the location, exact location and the nature park and everything?
It is fictionalized. So I drew a lot from Tennessee nature parks that I've been to, both in and around Nashville and in other areas of Tennessee. One of my biggest inspirations for the local Nashvillians who are watching was Bell's Bend Nature Park and Beeman Park, which are in Ashland City, Tennessee. So I drew a lot from those landscapes because it's where I've spent a ton of time. But I did fictionalize the town that they live in and the parks. I wanted it to be, a separate place that is inspired by these places that I love, but isn't these places either.
Yeah. So what gave you the idea? Can you talk us through the magic a little bit? What's the magic system and what kind of gave you the idea to create it this way?
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, I spend a lot of time in these nature parks. And so, and while I was writing the book, I took this naturalist course to learn about Tennessee ecology, or
Oh, wow.
native flora and fauna. So I was doing this program, which was really hands-on, out hiking, out learning things from experts. And so I was just absorbing all this information. And every time I would go out hiking, I would just take pictures of insects and flowers and plants, and just getting more and more and more to know and to love, the landscapes around me. And I was so inspired by them that I knew that's what I wanted to write about. And so The River Has Teeth, really, that's where the book came from. It just grew up out of these beautiful landscapes that I spent a ton of time in. And the magic grew up from my admittedly rudimentary understanding of ecology, and Tennessee natural history. So the land, I don't want to spoil like how it got the magic, but basically the land is imbued with the magic itself, and Della's family draws their magic from it. They use ingredients from the Bend to make their spells, and then they all have their own sort of individual magic that is also drawn from ecological concepts. So for example, Della, one of the main characters, she can kind of tap into, are you familiar with fungal networks like in forests?
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of idea that all the trees are connected by these fungal webs underneath the soil. And so she can tap into that, and that's where her magic comes from. And then this other character, Miles, her cousin, his magic, his like particular magic that's not about just like potions and spells, is he can use moths and butterflies to track missing people. And so where I drew that from was this kind of gross thing that I know butterflies do, which is called puddling. So we think of butterflies as always being on like pretty flowers and everything, but they need other minerals that they can't get from flowers. So you'll find them puddling on dead animals, or mud, blood, and grosser substances. And so I kind of took all these things like that I was learning about the Tennessee landscape and learning about, plants, animals, insects around me. And I kind of weaved all of those into the magic of Della's family.
I mean, you and I both, we have a little inside joke about describing using moths and things like that to describe. And I actually wrote one of our jokes into my young adult book just to see if you would notice it, the moth wing eyelashes joke.
I remember. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And so the family uses their magic for a pretty what's the word I'm looking for, like pretty pragmatic also, because you have a lot in there about socioeconomics and like what they do, so can you talk a little bit about that, how they use their magic to support themselves, and like what made you maybe kind of want to write about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Della's family, basically since Prohibition, they've been living by this land, drawing their magic from it. They sell spells to locals, and they can make all kind of different spells, but people mostly come to them for vengeance. So, you know, a wife's husband cheats on her and she wants to get him back. She goes to them for their spell for a cheating spouse. Or, you know, someone wants to get ahead at work and they want to get their boss. They'll go to the Lloyd family for that. But the Lloyds have been doing this for so long that it's become their livelihood. And it's been the way that they support themselves. And so, you know, they're thought of in the town as these kind of, you know, rustic, evil, you know, hillbilly types who, you know, are up there brewing evil spells. And so, you know, from an outside perspective, they aren't very nice people, and they're not someone that you would necessarily, from an outside perspective, see as good people. And so it was interesting for me to kind of get into to writing them from a place of affection and understanding. So I wanted to write about people whose livelihood came from other people's worst impulses. And so there's a lot of that. They're kind of doing the dirty work that other people think they're above. You know, but it's still their dirty work. And so, you know, Della, you know, early on in the book has this question, like, should we be making these terrible spells that are so harmful? But her mom always said, like, that's none of our business. They ask us for these spells, you know, we're just a tool in their hands, basically. So I don't know, that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, but I don't know if that really got at what you were asking.
No, totally. And then it also made me think about the fact, you know, that I think that there's a more common trope, which is that if I had magic, I could make a lot of money. It's like vampires are rich. You know what I'm saying? It's like these are the things we think about, these types of, like, maybe you know, in these types of worlds. So I guess I'm curious why, you know, let's say they can, you know, help people exact revenge and stuff. You know, you could have written that so that would have made them a lot of money and they were kind of living in the house at the top of the hill and sort of that type of thing. Why did you choose not to do that?
I think those just really aren't the kind of characters that I write. I think I naturally gravitate more toward writing low-income families and writing characters who don't have, you know, a lot of power in the larger culture. And so for them, magic is their power and it's their identity. It's what makes them who they are. So there's this one scene where Della is thinking about her parents and how, you know, their house is kind of crumbling around them. She's the one working at the grocery store to pay their land taxes. And she, you know, she could be really angry at her parents for that, but instead she has so much understanding. She's like, I understand it. It's hard to work a register or sling, you know, fast food hash when you've touched this power, when you've seen this magic at play. And so for the Lloyds, you know, the magic of the Bend is a way to survive. And it's their identity and it's who they are. So it's never going to be something that's going to make them rich. It's sustenance. But it's not just, you know, cheap spells to them. It's who they are. It's their identity.
It's really interesting. You know, you and I both like to write characters that are, you know, a little lower income or that, you know, have struggled with that type of thing. And I think, like you said, it's just the kind of characters you can relate to enough to write about them, that you find interesting to write, you know. But I did find that part of your book compelling, and I thought that was an interesting artistic choice, as opposed to maybe the more expected way to frame these people. You know, they're so powerful and they have, you know, they have the control over everybody's dark impulses. You know, you could have written that differently, and I found your choice really interesting and successful. So well done on that.
Thank you.
So question from Kayla: if you could get a Lloyd spell to get through the revising process, would you, and what would it be? Is it revising or is it drafting or is it everything?
Yeah,
that's for you. Is it drafting or revising that you hate more?
I actually love drafting because I think as like a pantser, I'm always sort of, you know, following a narrative thread and just seeing where it goes and having fun with it. For me, revision has always been more painful, especially the first like 2 rounds of revision where I'm having to break a lot of what I've made and, you know, start from scratch. And a lot of that is because I don't plot ahead of time. So it's kind of my own fault. But you know what? I would not take a Lloyd spell because as readers will learn in the book, those spells are going badly, badly wrong. And they're having unintended consequences. So
Like what? Like what do you think would be if you were to write this in, Erica uses the spell for revising and it has an unintended consequence, what would the consequence be?
Oh God, it could be anything. It could be that suddenly the book was filled with puns, you know, just terrible, terrible puns. It could be that like half the book was plagiarized. I think that would be a pretty bad outcome that I could see happening.
Oh yeah,
like half the book
like
was
you
just
didn't know it,
pulled.
but you were writing someone else's. Oh man.
Exactly. Like, isn't that always kind of a fear as a writer? Like, is this thing I'm writing original or did I pick it up somewhere? Did I hear it in
Yeah.
elementary school and it, you know, lodged in my brain and now I think I'm writing it, but I'm really plagiarizing someone else? I think that would, I don't know. I think that's what would happen if I used a Lloyd spell to revise my book.
Yeah, you know, I had like the worst nightmare thing happen one time where don't lecture me. I went on Goodreads. It was my first book. I didn't know better. I just wanted to see what people were saying. What I saw was that someone was like, she totally ripped off and like listed a couple TV shows that I had never seen. I had never seen and not even one episode. I never even saw a commercial because I don't even have cable or like TV. I just have Netflix on my computer. So like I never even saw a commercial for these shows. And it was like my nightmare, like, did I subconsciously, did someone say something about those shows that I don't remember? So it's like, yeah, it's the worst.
It is. And you know, I remember, I think it was Ghostwood Song. I had this line in there that I loved and it just felt so powerful. And I was like, God, I love this line.
Oh
And then I
no.
started getting this sort of feeling like, I think that
Mm.
somebody else wrote this. I've seen this somewhere else. And so I start Googling, I'm desperately Googling all over the internet. And then finally I get this little idea to look through my own files and I start searching my files. And it was in an abandoned manuscript of mine. It was a line I'd already written
Your
word
own line.
for word. So I had heard it somewhere. It was from myself, thankfully. Phew.
Wow. That's pretty meta. You can quote yourself. That would be pretty.
I think it's like, you know, when you're revising and you're like, oh, this is the perfect line to put right here. And then you read down
And
three
you put it into like
paragraphs
10 places.
and it's already there. You've already
Like the
had that
little
brilliant
turn of
idea.
phrase where you're like, you know, his hands itched toward me or some ridiculous thing. And you're like, that just sounds great. How so unique. No one's ever described it. And you find that you put that in like to 10 places right in that same paragraph. Yeah.
Yeah. We're never
And
as
that's
smart as we
why
think.
never. That's why revising is your enemy. Although I got like a lot of follow-up questions about the whole pantsing thing. Here's the thing. How do you know if you're writing anything that's going to work out? Like if you're pantsing, you didn't write an outline, how do you know if you're on the right track?
You don't. I mean, that's kind of the terror and wonder of it. You know, you're just telling yourself a story. Like that's my natural way of writing. But now, of course, I can't do that anymore because I have contracts and deadlines and, you know, less than a year to write a book. And so I've had to start going, okay, Waters, like we cannot be a straight up pantser anymore. So for like my new book that I'm writing right now, The Restless Dark, I actually wrote like a 6-page synopsis before I wrote a single word of it. And that felt so wrong to me. I hated it. It was like pulling teeth. Lauren, our literary agent, really had to hold my hand, or I don't know if hold my hand is right, maybe yank me, kicking and
Take your hands
screaming.
and put them on the keyboard.
Yeah, like through the whole thing. But you know what? Revision has been a lot easier.
You know what's funny?
I still don't want to do it though.
I always think of pantsers when people use that word. I always think of someone literally pulling their pants down and writing with their pants down. I don't know why. Every time I picture someone being like sitting down to write and be like, well, here we go. And I'm like, well,
that's surprisingly literal.
But it's like, it's already terrifying enough to write a book when you don't know if what you're doing is any good or if anyone will ever read this and enjoy it. Like it's already bad enough to like do this thing and be like, I have no idea what I'm doing or if anybody ever wants to read this. But then to do it with like no roadmap. alone in the wilderness. I admire that.
But you're such a hardcore plotter. Like, I've tried to use your like, what is it, like the 4-act beat sheet that you shared publicly. I tried so hard to use it. I was like, I'm gonna be like Wendy, this expert thriller writer plotter. I was so proud that I was gonna do it. And like I get like, I don't know, like 5, I fill in like 5 sections down. And by that point, I'm like hurling things at walls and screaming, and I hate you. And so I admire you that you're able to plot, because
No, because a lot of
no,
times my entries in those little boxes just say something like they have some sort of fight. Like it's not very detailed. It's just
still,
like it's
still.
like, okay, over here, I think she's running and he's chasing her. Like it's always something very like vague, because I don't know either. Like, I mean, I can't figure out, like I can figure out this act, but too far ahead, it's a very like nebulous idea. But at least
I
there's
mean,
some idea.
like, can you look ahead at a book and see kind of the narrative arc of it? Can you see like sort of in broad strokes what you want it to look like?
Only to that beat where it's like all is lost. I can never see
Oh,
Act 3 until I get there. Isn't that weird?
that's so interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
I always
Okay.
write a book as though it's going to end badly. Like that's it, that's the end. And then I get there and I'm like, okay, now what? There's still a whole other third act. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know why that is. Everyone just got such a different, unique process, right?
Yeah, we do. We all kind of just come
Mm-hmm.
at it from different ways.
Kayla asks, how would Shady from Ghostwood Song get along with Della and Natasha? That's a good question.
That is a great question. Like Shady is sweet but really hard-headed, and I think she would immediately get a crush on Della because Della's her type, right? Like Shady went for like moody, taciturn Sarah. So Della would just be like exactly her type. She would like her. Natasha, however, I think they would really butt heads. I think they would probably get into a fist fight. I could definitely see Shady and Natasha just going to town, wailing on each other. That seems really likely.
So, is there anything tiny or quiet that you love in this book? A single line or a feeling or a description? That's a really interesting question too.
Oh, I like that question. There's a lot of things like that actually. Um, there's the scene early on where Della is using her magic to she's out foraging for ingredients for their spells, and
Okay.
she can't find any mushrooms, and she knows her dad is going to want some mushrooms, and so she uses her magic to grow these turkey tail mushrooms,
Hmm.
and there's this little line where she says that her dad is gonna laugh at her as a show off for how big and dramatic they are. And I like that because like a lot of Della's storyline is, she has a lot to carry. Her mom is this monster, her dad is not helping out. And so anytime that Della has this kind of little moment of affection or lightness, I really liked writing those. She has a really similar scene to that later on, which I won't spoil, but she has another scene like that where she's using her magic with Natasha that I really, really liked. Really enjoyed writing. Yeah.
So I think we kind of have talked enough about the book. So if someone was listening and hadn't read the book, they'd feel oriented. So I guess my question is, would you feel comfortable doing a little reading for us so that we could
Yeah, yeah,
hear a little bit
yeah.
of the book?
Sure. I'll do a short reading from the first chapter.
Okay.
Um, just a little one. I don't want to go too far because it starts getting creepy. I don't want to creep out any younger readers.
Love it.
Yeah, like my mom started reading this book at night, and my mom's a pretty, like tough lady who believes in ghosts, and it's in her own right slightly terrifying. And she was scared, so I don't want to go too
Mm.
far and frighten my readers, but I'll read a little bit.
Okay.
Okay,
All
so
right.
this is chapter 1 from Della's point of view. The prison is always quiet, but never still. A train's low rumble vibrates the cement walls, releasing ancient dust and ghostly breaths. Water drips, mice scurry in the ruins. Starlings flutter in the rafters, all rattle and rasp. Wind moans through the narrow, broken windows. Everyone in town thinks this old prison is haunted. They don't know how right they are. I'm here, I call. My voice echoes in the pre-dawn darkness, making the starlings stop their chatter. I shine my flashlight over the path, watching for rubble that could trip me. If I fall, she might decide I'm prey. If I fall, are you awake? I ask, pushing away the fear before it can get its roots into me. I pause, listening for her slightest movement, a single breath. There's nothing. The short, fine hairs at the back of my neck prickle, and I spin, ready to block a slap, a lunge, a bite. But her silhouette in the darkness is still. She's back in her human form now, only a slight, pale woman with long, dark hair and a smell like the river at flood time. I wait for her to move, wait for her to show today's mood. Will she be quiet and sly or raging? She steps into a shaft of weak light. Her hair is matted with dirt and something dark and wet. Her eyes are as shadowed as the forgotten corners of this derelict prison. A smear of dried blood turns her thin lips into a clown's crooked smile. She comes closer and reaches a bony hand toward my face. Everything inside me wants to startle and back away, wants to bolt. But you can't show her any weakness, so I brace myself for her touch. Her hand is moist and cold and smells of earth. She caresses my cheek, her gaze almost gentle. Some old blood instinct, some half-forgotten longing rises in me. Mama, I say, leaning into her touch. She smiles at the endearment. And then her hand snarls in my hair and I'm flying across the room. I catch my balance just in time to keep from toppling into a brick wall. My fingers splay over the peeling white paint, knocking long flakes of it from the wall in my hurry to spin back around. A brick barely misses my face as I turn. Mama cackles.
I love it.
Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have any writing advice for writing at the line level? What I mean by that is that your prose is so beautiful and it seems like you've taken such care with every single line. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that.
I think that's something that you can teach a lot of us. You're just so good at that.
Thank you. I definitely like writing at the line level most. Like that's where I feel most comfortable. Like I don't feel like I'm an amazing plotter or that I write fantastic romances, but I do feel really comfortable at the line level. For me, it's been a lot of just reading writers who are excellent at the line level. So it's an unlikely choice for most YA writers, but Virginia Woolf has been amazing for that for me. Just reading her books because the way she puts words together is astonishing. So reading writers like that, I read a lot of poetry. So all of that helps. And then as far as my own writing process, I always have a draft where I read the whole book out loud to myself from start to finish. And when I'm reading out loud to myself, I hear the cadence of a line. I hear how the sounds work together. And so, you know, thinking of language as something that's meant to be spoken, meant to be heard. I think that act of reading aloud is one of the most important things that I do. Yeah.
That seems time consuming and we get like 2 months to write our books. So how do you put all that together? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, literally we get months, like 6 months or whatever to turn in a book. So how do you put all that process? Like, what's your process like from beginning to end?
Sure. Yeah. So like in the past, my process was pantsing, you know, just like starting somewhere and seeing where I ended up. I can't do that anymore. Just like you said, we don't have the time to do it. So I'll talk more about what my most recent process is like. So for example, the new book I'm writing, The Restless Dark, I basically had to pitch an idea to my editor for my option book. And she was like, yeah, I love this. And so then I wrote 50 pages and a 6-page synopsis, which, you know, she had to approve, and she did. They bought the book, they loved it. And so from there, I wrote a really fast first draft. I write what I would call like a skeleton draft. Like my first
I've
draft.
heard it called that before. I like that.
Yeah, they tend to be really short. Like a lot of people are overwriters. I'm an underwriter. Like my first drafts are often under 50,000 words. Like they're really short. And so then I spend subsequent drafts fleshing them out, building them up, adding on, you know, so every time I get like an edit letter from my my editor, I'm adding 20,000 words to a manuscript just based on her notes. And then like by the time I'm getting towards the end where I'm starting to look at the line level, that's where I really start slowing down and I read the entire manuscript out loud to myself, and tinker. That's where I'm in my happy place. So I spend as much time there as I'm able to. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So here's a question. What is your favorite part of the book to write, the beginning or the end, or is there a particular part that you like to write the best?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll tell you the part I like to write the least, which is the middle. The
X.
middles are so hard. I actually like it varies from book to book. Like I actually really enjoyed writing the beginning of The River Has Teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Like actually my first draft, I wrote about 60,000 words and the plot just wasn't working. So I ended up tossing the whole thing and starting from scratch just with the same characters and setting. But I still kept like the first two chapters. Like those have almost never changed. Like it was just an immediate sense of like, this is Della's voice. This is the world that she lives in. So I do like those early chapters where you get to kind of, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
move as fast. Like you have to move fast enough because it's a YA novel, but you can kind of let the reader get immersed in the world. So I love, love, love writing a beginning.
Innings. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes an ending can be really exciting to write too. Like The River Has Teeth's ending ended up changing a lot, actually. Like I think I wrote it a little too dark and bleak for YA. I think if it had been an adult novel, it would have stayed how it was, but it just was too harsh for YA. And so my editor had me redo it. And it ended up being so much better. It ended up being, cathartic and much more hopeful. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I like beginnings and I like endings and I hate middles, which is probably how most writers feel. I don't know. How do you feel as a writer?
Weirdly, I was nodding when you said this because I've never really had my first chapters change very much from the beginning of
Really?
the draft, the thing I turned into on proposal, to the end when I turn in the final. The first chapter I wrote in the first place is usually still there. Or I've had it where I've like reversed chapters 1 and 2 if I have multiple points of view, like who to put first. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the only time that the first chapters change, which is so funny, right?
That is funny. Actually, I was just reading your new book, She's Too Pretty to Burn. I want everybody to see how beautiful it is.
Oh, thank you.
And I remembered because I read an early partial draft of She's Too
You
Pretty to
did.
Burn. And I remember being like, oh yeah, this chapter is still really close to what it was when I read it.
Yeah, I
And
think I reversed 1 and 2, and that was the only difference because I put like Mick first.
when I read your book before, I don't feel like you had one point of view being in past tense and one in present tense. Am I remembering that right? Because I loved how you did that in this book. I thought
I
having
don't remember. That might have changed at some point. I always thought it would be cool to write something where one of the POV catches up to the present. That was fun. Like I love that idea where like one's lagging behind and catching up. And in this one, it doesn't really 100%, but I'm writing one now in adult where I literally have it like one POV like takes place over like a period of time, but it like catches up to the other one, which is in present tense. I always thought that would be fun. Oh, I
like
did it in
that's
this other way too.
that's what like Temper, Lane Fargo, her book does that, right? Is
Oh
it's
yeah,
sort of
and
the dual
which one?
timelines that catch
It's in
up.
They Never Learn.
That's it. They never learn.
And
Yeah,
then it
not
catches
Temper.
up where, yeah, where you finally realize like what's happening.
That was so brilliant the way she did that. I thought that was
Oh
so
my
good.
God.
And I think
Love
you
it.
really pulled this off too and She's Too Pretty to Burn. Like I thought that like the past tense point of view had this kind of almost nostalgic quality, whereas like mixed present tense point of view kept you really in the moment. Like, oh, it was so
Oh,
good.
that's nice
I
of you to say. Thank
I
you.
thought you really pulled that off well.
It's kind of like if you're writing, I don't know if you agree, but like when you're writing two first person points of view, it is very hard to get them to not read like the same person. It's
Yeah.
very difficult because you're the one writing them, so they're going to kind of sound like you. So to pull those like perspectives apart is so tough, right?
It is tricky, and that was one of my early challenges with The River Has Teeth because
Yeah.
it has two present tense
Yeah.
point of view
I
characters.
was wondering if you did anything stylistic, like intentional to do that.
I did. I like Della is someone who's like really familiar with the landscape, and so she
Hmm.
knows she knows what every flower and tree and
Yeah.
moth is called, whereas Natasha doesn't. And so it's just a tree, that's some water. So like using the kind of terminology that they would use, and also just like where their headspaces were. Like Natasha's like
Hmm.
worrying about like college and her friend group, and Della's in a whole different world. So I think
Mm-hmm.
just having them be such different characters with different interests and backgrounds, being in different socioeconomic brackets, like all of that
Mm-hmm.
played into, I think, making them sound really different from each other.
There was another thing too. First of all, I caught the thing you did with the like all the botanical stuff in Della's. I was like, that's really smart. I've read other people do it like when one character's a musician and that character is constantly comparing things or using the language of music. And I'm like, that's smart. And you did that same thing with like naturey stuff where Della's constantly framing things in this way. But I also felt like Della was interesting because she doesn't necessarily feel like a modern teenager. You know, she
Yeah.
hasn't been raised in like, you know, LA or whatever. You know, she's kind of like been sequestered a little bit. And so she has this sort of not vintage, but a like little bit of a timeless quality to her
Mm-hmm.
interior monologue and stuff, you know, whereas Natasha is very like right here, right now, you know. I don't know if you did that on
Definitely.
purpose.
I did. That was really intentional. Like, I mean, like no one in Della's family even owns a telephone until her cousin
Yeah.
Miles makes her take a cell phone from him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, she just has entirely different priorities and thoughts and feelings and ways of looking
Mm-hmm.
at the world than Natasha did. And so that and that really helped differentiating their perspectives. Yeah.
But you know, I was thinking about that when I was reading The River Has Teeth, and I was thinking about that from just it reminded me of something, which is that I wrote historical one time. My first book was like set in the 1980s, and I was a kid. I don't remember anything, but I was like a child, so I kind of remember what people had and stuff like that. But then when I went back and I had to do research, I realized that there was actually a lot more going on that I didn't know about because we didn't have technology because we were poor. So like
Right.
I didn't have cable, I didn't have color TV, I didn't have a phone that did, you know what I mean? I didn't even know that computers existed until I was like much older. They didn't have them in my school, so they didn't have computers in low income schools. I didn't know anybody who had one. So I was thinking about that a little bit with Della too, which is just I felt that that was like I don't know if you did that on purpose, but I didn't know if you were kind of talking about that a little bit through her, which is just the fact that it's just sometimes without the availability of that, it does change you as a person, but maybe not always for the worse.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that are subtle but are there. Like you'll notice, like
Mm-hmm.
Natasha and all her friends, like have very specific terminology they use for themselves, you know, whereas that's not something Della has access to or thinks about. She doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have access to TikTokers, you know, talking about sexual
Mm-hmm.
orientation, or, you know, she doesn't have a lot of friends, and so she's more isolated in that way, which I think, yeah, makes her less like a modern teenager, and especially less like a modern like middle or upper class teenager,
Mm-hmm.
which I enjoyed writing a lot, which was it like I liked that it had Natasha's perspective too. Like I felt like they balanced each other out, but it was just kind of a different way of writing teenage emotions and preoccupations and all of that. I don't know, it's
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
really interesting. Okay, we got involved in that conversation. I fell behind in our chat, so hold on. You told
Okay.
us the character in Ghostwood song was inspired by a nightmare you had. I didn't know that. Did you have any inspiration from your dreams when driving The River Has Teeth?
No, I don't think I had any dream inspiration for The River Has Teeth. I did have this kind of moment that was sort of an epiphany though, where I was at Bellsman Nature Park. It was the first time I'd ever gone, and like this park is really like beautiful. It's these like, you know, rolling kind of fields filled with wildflowers and butterflies and birds. But on the day that I went, it was fall and everything was dead and brown, and there was no one else there, and the sky was this sort of brilliant blue with just like almost no clouds, and you know the like shoulder high grass is brown and dead, and it's like shh, you know, in the wind. And I had this feeling, it was kind of like being dropped into like a surrealist painting. Like it felt so eerie, and it felt like this place had something bigger than it should, something more was going on there that ought to. And so it was this kind of feeling of being um out of place and out of time, and that was really the moment that I started thinking about the Bend as this place of magic. So I definitely, you know, I did have these kind of personal experiences that were a little eerie that fed into the book, but nothing quite so dramatic as in Ghostwood Song.
Did you go alone? Did you feel scared, like being there in the place? Like, you feel like creepy things are happening?
So like I was with just my spouse, and so it was just the two of us.
Okay.
I think if I'd been there by myself, I would have probably turned around and left, if I'm honest. I think I would have been really, really scared. Which is funny because now that I've been to this park, like 100 times, it's not scary to me anymore in that way. But just in that moment, it was just the right conditions, like it's kind of like my new book, The Restless Dark, that I'm writing. I happened to visit Cloudland Canyon um, on a day that it was really foggy and eerie. And like every time I've been back since, it's just a canyon. It's fine. But on this one day that I went, it was just the right conditions for it to be scary, and it inspired a book. And so that seems to happen to me a lot.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because when I was young, I used to go, my dad's in Northern California, and we'd go hiking a lot and stuff like that. And there would definitely be these foggy moments in those hiking experiences that were just like, you could picture all kinds of things. Like as a child, I would imagine there were fairies flying around, or like spirits going through the fog. I mean, it's very, very creepy in its wonderful way that I love very much. And I'm sure you do too. Did you say Bellsman Nature Park? I'm trying to find it.
It's Bell's Bend.
Bell's Bend.
Bell's Bend Nature Park.
When you were talking earlier, I dropped a link to the other one you had mentioned into the Facebook chat just for fun, so people can
nice.
look at it. So I think one last question that we'd all be interested in hearing about is, I know we only have maybe about 5 more minutes. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your next project?
Yeah, I think this one is right up your alley, and I'm probably going to be like messaging you like, Wendy, please help me. So
I love to see it.
Okay, so this book is it's about this true crime podcast that calls itself Human Beasties, and they have this very macabre contest to find the missing body of a serial killer in a foggy, eerie canyon in Georgia. And yeah, so it's the serial killer who 2 years before jumped to his death in the canyon, but they never found his body. And so this is one of those less social justice oriented podcasts, and one of the more sort of voyeuristic, icky ones. And they decided to host this contest. And so it's 50 diehard true crime fans who come to this eerie canyon in Georgia to try to find the serial killer's body. And so, it's part serial killer con and, part an actual like hardcore hiking and looking for a human remains. One of the main characters is the Cloud Kiss Killer. That's what his name is. It was his last victim, the one who escaped him. And she's been, living in fear and worrying that he's still out there. And so she's joined this contest in hopes of finding his body and giving herself some peace. The other main character thinks that she might be a serial killer. And so they team up together with another contestant to try to find this serial killer's body. And obviously a lot of spooky stuff ensues. People go missing, people almost get murdered, and it's sort of this question of is it the canyon causing all of this, or is it us? So yeah, it's still, it's still in the early stages, but that's kind of more or less the gist of it.
I love it so much. Wait, so would you earlier mentioned something about horror? Like, is this horror? Is it thriller? What do you think is the difference between horror and thriller?
What is it?
What is it? I don't understand.
We've so far been calling this new book a supernatural YA. So sure. I feel like all of my writing kind of defies genre a little bit. Like, it's kind of fantasy, it's kind of horror, it's kind of thriller, it's kind of mystery. So you'll see my books get called all kind of different things, and I'm okay with that. But I think this one, more than the others, you could safely call a paranormal thriller. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. I really like that. I've always wanted to write something speculative, and so I really admire the way you kind of blend those in together.
Thank you.
Well, I have really loved chatting with you. And thank you so much for inviting me to share this launch with you. Everyone, we're going to see a link from Parnassus Books in the Facebook chat where you can purchase this wonderful book from Parnassus. And I believe it's going to be signed copies, yeah?
Yeah, they're
If
all
they purchase
signed.
it from Parnassus. So you'll get the pleasure of having Erica's John Hancock on your signed book. So I really encourage you support your indie and order from Parnassus. And if you've already got this one at home, then I really recommend you buy this for someone else because I really think everybody will love this book, young and old. So beautiful work. I'm so excited for you. And congratulations. I think you recently sold it to France. Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. That's
Thank
exciting.
you. Well, thank you so much for joining me and hosting this with me. It was a lot of fun. And thank you to Parnassus Books for hosting and to
Yes.
everybody who came and attended.
Yes. Thank you so much. All right. Well, have a great night. It was great chatting with you. I'm going to skedaddle, so I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. It's Ann Patchett and Sparky. Thank you so much for joining us for this terrific event. Now we need you to do one more thing, which is buy the book from Parnassus Books. It's the way you can support authors and support your local independent bookstore. Because if we don't make money off these events, we can't keep doing them. And then there'll be no dog biscuits for Sparky. Shop local. Thanks so much.